It's time for us to get into our first big story for today as we jump into a very, very important story. Just coming off the sidelines of the presidential speech regarding the independence. So we're going to be deep diving into the Nigerian government's latest tax reforms and their impact on clean energy policies. Now, like I said about the speech, President Bola Tinubu's administration has embarked on significant tax overhauls aimed at fostering sustainable economic growth. A critical component of these reforms is the incentivization of clean energy, which aligns with global efforts to transition towards a greener future. Now, the repeal of certain levies on diesel and the removal of value-added tax, VAT, from 63 essential goods, including energy-related products, are set to alleviate some of the pressures on both consumers and businesses, especially within the energy sector.
Now, these reforms reflect the government's broader push to facilitate the growth of clean energy by offering tax breaks and concessions to encourage investment in renewable energy sources. This is part of a concerted effort to support green projects while reducing Nigeria's dependence on traditional environmentally harmful energy sources. Additionally, the removal of VAT on diesel will ease the financial burden on transport and logistics sector heavily reliant on diesel, thus reducing operational cost for businesses.
And so joining us today to dissect these tax reforms and the critical role they play in advancing Nigeria's clean energy goals is Suraj Oyewale. He is a chartered accountant and tax practitioner. So he'll provide us some insight into how these policies are structured and what they mean for consumers, businesses, and for that cooking gas cylinder in your kitchen. Well, Suraj, thank you so much for joining us and very good morning to you.
Good morning, Judith. How are you?
I'm doing.
Suraj, welcome. Thank you. I'm here too. Suraj, let's get started. How do you see the removal of VAT from diesel contributing to the adoption of cleaner energy sources? Considering diesel's critical role in Nigeria's current energy landscape, we all know, we all use it, we all need it. Almost all of us.
Okay, yeah, thanks once again for having me. And diesel is not a clean fuel, so we need to probably start with that. Whether the production of diesel, which comes one of the products of the hydrocarbon, the petroleum resources, whether the refining process, the processing, which is called refining, and whether the consumption, the utilization of the diesel itself, none of these activities is it's actually a clean energy, it's a clean source of, fuel. But the government is not looking at just the clean energy alone when they are making these tax reforms, because two of the other goals, that the government are looking at are energy security as well as, cost of living, reduction. So I think that this specific reduction, removal of VAT on diesel is not targeting clean energy, but targeting, cost of living, cost of production, because we all know that a lot of activities today depend on diesel, industrial uses, a lot of manufacturing companies depend on diesel to power their plant, power their heavy equipment and all of these things. So, so we can see from a clean energy perspective, this is not something that advances that goal, but the immediate, problem we have at the moment is, high cost of living, inflation, and diesel being a very critical component of the energy supply, of the energy, of the source of energy for production is being incentivized. They are incentivizing this production because, this diesel forms a very, very important part of the whole production process. So that's the angle in which government is looking at. But if you look at those 63 lists, this is just one of them. There are a lot of other things on them which actually tie into the clean energy initiative of government. But this specific one on diesel, it actually at variance with the with the aim of government to encourage adoption of clean energy sources. But like I said, it's not just about adoption of clean energy. What are our immediate issues at the moment, which is inflation, higher cost of production, and the government needs to tackle that at the moment. So it's a balance between clean energy as well as lower cost of production.
Suraj, I'm so glad you're bringing this up because it takes us to our next question. With the government's tax incentives aimed at clean energy, how visible is it, especially for for transition, for businesses that want to transition, from diesel to renewable energy alternatives in the short term?
Okay, so I mean, if you look at diesel, it serves, it comes handy in three main uses of energy. The first one is transportation. A lot of vehicles, especially heavy-duty vehicles, depend on diesel. We have the logistics. We have because the the heavy-duty vehicles actually depend on diesel to power them, and also you have the industrial use because you also have because you have a lot of industries, the construction industry, the agriculture, who use, these industries use a lot of diesel because, the whole process of powering their, equipment actually comes from they use this a lot. But the one that is most relevant is the power generation because most businesses at the moment use, because of the issues, challenges with our electric power supply system, although things are improving, but because of these historical challenges in our power generation system, many businesses have had to resort to diesel as a form of, to power their generator, to power their machine, all of these things. So, so from the transition angle, I think this power generation is an angle in which, transition will come fastest because, we have houses, we have companies, we have small to medium sized businesses that are now transiting to, solar power, solar powered, processes. You have houses that are completely off grid now, relying on solar. So I think those ones, it's easier for those ones to transit to cleaner energy sources than those ones, that maybe the transportation sector. Because how many people can afford electric vehicles, or how many people can actually afford, the vehicles, the alternative sources of energy, which setup cost is very, very high. So at the moment, I believe that it is the power generation angle that, there might be a quick transition, than other uses of diesel.
Okay, so I see what you're saying there. Immediately, it might not be that easy. But if we can take away the much that we spend on diesel for manufacturing, that's something to get away with. However, what if a person was interested in investing in renewable energy? Which one of these tax reforms best tackles that issue of investment in renewable energy?
Okay, there are a number of items on the list that actually renewable energy, focusing. For example, we have the chargers for electric vehicles, the electric vehicle chargers. You have the the charging system for heat. You have the batteries for heat. You have the solar panel. We have all of these things are actually the production of all of these things are exempted from VAT. So those ones have more relevance to to the aim of the drive of government in achieving this this cleaner energy. So I would say that beyond diesel, the other components, they also have the LPG, the cooking gas, so something that is relevant to anybody, So if you are dealing in that, your equipment, instead of paying, let's say, instead of investing, let's say 107.5 million, VAT inclusive. Remember the VAT rate in Nigeria is 7.5%. Instead of having to invest 107.5 million on it, that 7.5% component has now been, is now out of it because because of the VAT exemption on your cost of, on the equipment that you need to set up all these investments. So I believe that if you have something that you needed 107.5 million to invest on, now you need just 100 million to invest on it. That's a big incentive to to people. So investors will like that, and we hope that this will drive more investors into this space of renewable energy, production and manufacturing, and also even utilization.
Now, of course, this tax reforms is for Nigeria to meet its clean energy goals. But can we actually do this? Can this tax reforms affect the change that we want to see when it comes to global carbon emissions and reducing it when it comes to our quota for our nation?
Okay, I mean, you all know that there has been a lot of debate about the energy transition in recent times, and the UN set 2050 as the target for for achievement of net zero by countries, but some member countries domesticated their own. In Nigeria, for example, we knew that 2050 is not going to be feasible for us. So Nigeria set its own target of 2060 as the achievable target to achieve that. As a realistic target deadline to achieve that net zero situation. But I think all these policies tie into the effort of government to achieve this. Recently, after we all know there was the COP26 that held in Glasgow in 2021, where many stakeholders, governments all over the world came together and they discussed how they could, move towards a more environmentally friendly world. Okay, and Nigeria, after much of that, Nigeria came back with the energy transition plan, and one of the things they did was to come up with Nigeria Climate Change Act, and all these policies. Now government came up with some tax reforms as an incentive to encourage adoption of these sources of energy. So I believe all of these things tie into the general goal for achieving our net zero by 2060. But I think that 2060 is just that's 36 years away, 36 years away, and I believe that it's something that is actually achievable if the government continues in this drive, not just using tax as one of the ways of encouraging it, but also investing in it themselves and other things that is business for people, that is consumption, that is adoption. So I believe that all these policies tie into the the goal of government, and it looks realistic for me if it continues.
Well, Suraj, first of all, I'm looking at pictures of windmills there, and I'm wondering when Nigeria is going to tap into that kind of energy, because I don't see windmills around. But then in local parlance, there's this: you can lead the horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. Now, you can make tax reforms, you can ask individuals or companies to invest in renewable energy, but are the people willing or encouraged, or are they ready to embrace this kind of energy? Can they even afford it? Let's ask that very basic question, Suraj.
Okay, whether from production angle or from consumption angle, I think there's still problem beyond tax incentives. I agree that tax incentive is just one of the things. You can take, like you said, you can take a horse to the river. You can't make it drink water. Government are doing their own with this tax incentive, but tax is not the only thing that affects investment. In fact, some investors don't even care about tax rate. They just want, a more stable environment. For example, FX. If a foreign investor is coming to Nigeria, for example, to come and invest in such kind of thing, he's not going to be interested in not just the tax, in just the tax rate, what is exempted, what's not exempted, but also how can I repatriate my profit to my own country? Okay, so we have FX issue now comes into the picture, and all those considerations, political stability, and the general environment of doing business. So tax is just one of the many components that investors consider in investing. So we need to get right other things before these things become attractive. And on the consumption, adoption by consumers themselves. Yes, I believe that we also have a long way to go there, because if you look at the cost of these things, how many middle class people, how many lower class people, for example, can actually afford the cost of setting up solar power, for example. So even if the prices reduce, the cost of setup reduces because of the all these incentives, all these tax incentives. What is the purchasing power of people? How many people can afford them? So I believe that there has to be some holistic method, holistic approach in all ramifications before before all these things become habits, because all these things become easy for anybody to to just tap into. Otherwise, we could just be doing all of these things, and it might not get to the target people.
Right. Suraj, I'm so glad you're putting it there, because when we put into concept the lower class individuals, Nigerians, the middle class Nigerians, and even, the middle class has been eroded in the last 1 year when you look at how the soaring cost of living. And so one has to ask the bigger question of whether or not, individuals can even convert their cars from fuel-powered, petrol-powered cars to CNG power car. That's a compressed natural gas, right? And even just, electric vehicles as well, because we understand tax reforms was imposed as well on electric vehicles and CNG. But towing that same line, let's also talk about cooking gas. That was also value-added tax was removed on cooking gas as well. Do you see this affect the price of 1 kg of cooking gas, and what it would mean for homes in terms of payment for cooking gas?
You can cook more.
It should, yes. All of us should cook more. So I think it should, because given the fact that this cooking gas is becoming part and parcel of our life, and many people adopt it. Even this is something that even the lower class, the upper middle class, it's something that is quite attractive to them. So I expect the prices to reduce. It might not be immediate because they have stock that they've bought, at the old price. And the way VAT works is that it gets transferred to the final consumer. So they have to consider the cost. And, when they're selling it, you have to consider the cost, and, it might not immediately transfer to the consumer, to the consumer. So, in the, after a few weeks or months, I expect that the prices of this thing should come down. And the government also needs to work with enforcement, because one of the problems we have in this country is that when some of these policies are done, the people to implementing them just go to sleep. And we have businessmen, we have business people trying to profiteer from this thing and not bringing the price down, not reflecting, keeping the old price rather than reflecting the new realities and all of these things. But in general, we believe that there should be a reduction in these things. In this cooking gas and other components of the other items affected by these tax reforms in the short to medium term.
Now, finally, I have to ask you, right? IMF often, I'm sure, year in, year out, every quarter, every 6 months, they remind Nigeria that its tax contribution to our GDP is quite low. Do you still see, with this tax reforms, do you see our tax go, the yearly contribution of tax to the GDP, the country's GDP, go even lower? Or would it be still significant as it were last year?
Good question. There has always been this debate in the tax circle and fiscal policy circle that tax incentive is not the best, way to stimulate growth and encourage, And ordinarily, when you remove tax, from an item, it reduces government collection. What goes in the government purse reduces, because let's say the government collects, let's say 3 billion naira annually from all these items that have not been, let's say the VAT collection on all these items, let's estimate it to be, let's say, 3 billion naira per annum. What that means is that the income to government, the revenue to government, the tax received to government is going to reduce by that amount because of the reduction in VAT, because of the removal in VAT on that. But if you look at it holistically, you realize that these incentives tend to stimulate a sector, okay? You have more investors coming in, we have, more people being able to adopt them. We have more sales. We have more employment. We have, so when you start incentive to stimulate a sector, you get taxes in other ways. For example, when more employment is created in that sector, in the renewable energy, clean energy space sectors, people get paid. People have to pay their personal income tax on their salary. Although that one goes to the state government, but it's still, part of the whole tax bucket. More companies begin to make more profit because their cost of production has reduced. When they make more profit, what that means is that government gets more on their profit. And don't forget, in Nigeria, the cost of the tax rates on company profits is about 30%. Okay, so that is more tax for government. So it's a give and take situation. Government are in the short term, reducing the taxes, sacrificing the tax revenue they have made in the first. In 1 to 3 years of that policy implementation, to a medium or long term increase in collection of taxes from other sources. So when government uses tax incentives to stimulate a sector, they're looking at the big picture of economic growth. And when the economy grows, you have a situation in which taxes in other forms come to government. And it's not just the taxes. So I believe that, yes, there might be a reduction in our tax to GDP ratio as a result of these things, if they are significant, if that sector is significant. But in the next few years, when the effects begin to come in, then we believe that at that time, the effects come in, the positive effects come in multiple folds, and you have taxes from other sources, you have employment of people, we have, more companies making more profits, more taxes to government, more tax revenue to government as a result of that. So, so that's the thinking of government anytime they come up with some tax, exemption or waiver initiatives. I believe this should work.
Suraj, let's play Back to the Future. Let's take a look at 2030. Africa is expected to at least have completed some or most of its SDG goals. By then, Nigeria would also perhaps be expected to have embraced renewable energy. How prevalent do you think in 2030 renewable energy would be in Nigeria?
I think the adoption is getting fast. 10 years ago, how many houses were using, solar to power their houses? You have more and more houses, domestic level, keen into heat. You have more and more businesses keen into it, and I believe that this is going to continue. And
Do you think it's going to
when we
get
have more
cheaper?
investors
Do you think it's going to get cheaper as we go?
I think it's going to get cheaper. I mean, all these incentives that government are giving, we encourage more investors to come in, we reduce the cost of setting them up, we reduce the cost of production, and I believe that it's going to get cheaper. When it gets cheaper, more people will key into it, and it helps us to move towards our SDG goal.
All right, then. Suraj, I want to say thank you very much for being a part of our breakfast show, first hour here this morning. Thank you for joining us, and of course, we'll be coming back to you many times for more of these very insightful comments and views that you give us. Thank you indeed.
Thank you. Have a nice day.